Tehran has just invalidated half a decade of American intelligence. In a stunning press conference broadcast just hours ago, Iran's Ministry of Intelligence declared that it has been secretly running the CIA's entire network of high-value assets inside the country since 2019. Is America's entire war plan for the Persian Gulf built on a foundation of enemy lies? The announcement was cold, precise. It came without fanfare from a senior official in Iran's powerful Ministry of Intelligence, the MOIS. He didn't just make a claim. He provided proof. Names, dates, and operational details of supposed CIA-run missions the MOIS claims to have personally directed from the very beginning. They presented video confessions from individuals previously thought by Washington to be top-tier informants. They weren't informants. They were double agents. Every single one. For 1,825 days, the Central Intelligence Agency's eyes and ears in Iran were not its own. They belonged to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. This is a catastrophic failure of intelligence on a scale not seen in generations. It goes beyond simple misinformation. This is the weaponization of intelligence itself. The operation, codenamed Echo Chamber by the Iranians, wasn't just about feeding Langley bad data. It was a sophisticated psychological campaign designed to reinforce the biases and assumptions already held within the American intelligence community. They didn't feed the CIA what was false. They fed the CIA what it expected to be true. The result is a strategic blind spot of terrifying proportions. For 5 years, every report on Iranian missile development, every assessment of its nuclear program's progress, every analysis of the IRGC's force posture, and every profile of its senior leadership has been tainted. Not just tainted, it has been meticulously crafted by the very adversary it was meant to be observing. The Pentagon and the CIA believed they had a clear picture of their primary antagonist in the Middle East. Instead, they were staring into a mirror, one carefully constructed by Tehran's intelligence architects. Every move the U.S. made, every satellite retasked, every carrier group deployed to the Gulf may have been influenced by this grand deception. The immediate fallout is a frantic, top-to-bottom review of all intelligence streams related to Iran. At the Pentagon, war planners are reportedly working around the clock, attempting to discern what is real and what is fabricated. Think of the implications. Entire threat assessments, worth billions of dollars and countless man-hours, are now potentially worthless. Contingency plans for conflict, drawn up based on the supposed locations of mobile missile launchers or the assessed vulnerabilities of command and control bunkers, must be thrown out. America, in a flash, has been blinded. But this wasn't just about feeding bad data. It was about confirming a pre-existing bias inside the Pentagon. What if the CIA was fed exactly what it wanted to hear? That is the true genius and the horror of Operation Echo Chamber. Intelligence agencies, like any large bureaucracy, are susceptible to confirmation bias. Analysts who have spent years building a profile of an adversary's capabilities tend to give more weight to new intelligence that confirms their existing theories. The Iranian MOIS and the IRGC's intelligence organization exploited this human flaw with surgical precision. They studied years of public U.S. intelligence assessments from the DIA and CIA. They knew what Washington thought Iran was building, so they provided proof. Did the Pentagon believe Iran was focusing on solid-fuel ballistic missiles? The compromised network would provide irrefutable evidence of exactly that, complete with forged technical specifications and staged satellite photographs of engine tests. Did U.S. intelligence assess that a specific commander within the Quds force was a hardliner pushing for aggressive action? The network would supply fabricated communications confirming his radical posture, perhaps even encouraging the U.S. to focus its counterterrorism resources on him, while the real threats operated in the shadows. It was a feedback loop of deception. The CIA would issue a request for information to its assets, and the IRGC would craft the perfect response to fit the narrative. Consider the case of Iran's drone program. Over the past 24 months, U.S. intelligence reports have consistently highlighted the increasing sophistication of platforms like the Shahed series drones. This intelligence directly informed U.S. and allied defensive postures in the region, leading to the deployment of specific counter-drone systems and air defense batteries. Now, officials must confront a chilling question. Was the threat profile of those drones intentionally exaggerated? Were their performance ceilings and electronic warfare capabilities inflated in the reports fed to the CIA? Perhaps the goal was to force the United States to spend billions on defensive systems for one type of threat, while Iran quietly perfected another, entirely different and unobserved offensive technology. It's a classic strategy of misdirection, executed on a staggering, multi-year scale. The invalidated satellite coordinates and missile specs are a disaster. But the real damage is far more insidious. Tehran didn't just blind America's eyes. They may have guided its hand. Where exactly did this bad intelligence lead the U.S. military? Every decision made by CENTCOM in the last 5 years is now under review. Take the consistent U.S. naval presence in the Strait of Hormuz. The size and composition of those carrier strike groups are determined by perceived threat levels. If the intelligence fed by Operation Echo Chamber indicated a higher than actual risk of Iranian fast attack craft swarms or coastal anti-ship missile batteries, the U.S. would deploy a larger, more provocative force. This, in turn, allows Tehran to paint the U.S. as the aggressor on the international stage, fueling its own domestic propaganda. The deception creates a political reality that serves Iran's strategic goals. The U.S. military becomes an unwitting actor in a script written in Tehran. It extends beyond military deployments. Diplomatic negotiations, economic sanctions, and covert action programs could all have been predicated on this false intelligence picture. Did the U.S. apply sanctions to a specific sector of the Iranian economy because its compromised assets reported it was crucial for a secret weapons program, when in reality it was a less important industry, and the real critical components were being sourced elsewhere? Did American diplomats take a hard line in negotiations because they were briefed on an Iranian military capability that simply did not exist, thereby scuttling any chance of a peaceful resolution? The potential chain reactions are dizzying. Every point of friction between the U.S. and Iran over the last 60 months must now be re-examined through the lens of this massive deception. Just hours ago, a classified report began circulating within CENTCOM. It suggests that Operation Echo Chamber had a second, far more dangerous objective than just feeding disinformation. What if the network was also used to identify and map the CIA's own operational procedures? This is the intelligence community's ultimate nightmare, one that transcends the immediate problem of bad data in Iran. By controlling the entire network, the IRGC wasn't just a passive observer. They were active participants in CIA tradecraft. For 5 years, they watched how the agency communicates with its assets. They learned the encryption methods, the dead drop protocols, the digital security measures, and the financial payment systems used to manage a clandestine network. They saw firsthand how CIA case officers attempt to build rapport, how they task their agents, and what kind of information they prioritize. They essentially received a 5-year, all-access masterclass on how the CIA operates in a hostile environment. The implications are catastrophic. This knowledge isn't confined to Iran. The CIA uses variations of the same fundamental tradecraft globally. The playbook that the IRGC has now captured could be shared with other adversaries: Russia, China, North Korea. Tehran now possesses the institutional knowledge to help other nations hunt and expose American intelligence operations within their own borders. They can train foreign intelligence services on what to look for, how to spot a potential CIA recruitment pitch, and how to identify the subtle electronic fingerprints of the agency's communication platforms. The damage is not contained to the Persian Gulf. It is a global contagion. A virus has been released into the system. A source speaking on the condition of anonymity has confirmed that initial forensic analysis of the data released by Iran points to something even more specific. The IRGC didn't just passively learn the CIA's methods. They actively tested them. They would have their own double agents report fabricated security concerns or request specific types of equipment, just to see how the CIA would react. They were reverse engineering the agency's counterintelligence and security protocols in real time. They weren't just reading the playbook. They were red teaming it, finding its weaknesses, and logging every response. The echo chamber wasn't just for sending messages out. It was for pulling secrets in. The CIA believed it was running a network of spies to penetrate Iran. The horrifying reality is that Iran was running the CIA to penetrate the CIA itself. But the most urgent discovery from the initial damage assessment is not about past failures. It concerns a current, active operation. According to this new CENTCOM report, one of the primary missions of the compromised network over the last year was to help identify and provide targeting data for a top-secret American asset believed to be operating deep within the IRGC's own command structure, an asset the CIA refers to as Prometheus. For 12 months, the CIA was using an Iranian-controlled network to hunt for a leak in Iran's security, unaware that they were actually directing the IRGC's own counterintelligence service right to their most valuable source. The report states that Prometheus's last communication with his handlers was 72 hours ago. Then, total silence. Was he captured, interrogated, or was his discovery the final, triumphant checkmate in Iran's 5-year game? For hours, this was the prevailing theory. But inside the CIA's Counterintelligence Mission Center, a frantic, last-ditch analysis is proposing a far more terrifying possibility. What if Prometheus was never captured at all? What if this deafening silence is not an end, but a beginning? The theory is based on a deep-cut contingency plan known as acoustic shadow, a protocol for an asset who knows they are about to be fatally compromised but cannot transmit a final warning. The protocol is brutally simple. If a specific, prearranged communication window is missed 3 times in a row, exactly 72 hours, it is not a sign of capture. It is the message. A dead man's switch. A final, desperate flare fired from behind enemy lines. And the single message Prometheus was tasked to send with his silence was the most critical one he possessed. Confirmation that a devastating, non-conventional attack against a U.S. interest was no longer a plan, but an active, imminent operation. The clock had started. So now the question tormenting U.S. intelligence is no longer, where is Prometheus? It's, what did he see? And with the entire echo chamber network now revealed as a hostile architecture, the CIA has no way of knowing where, when, or how the blow will land. They are flying blind, in the middle of a hurricane that Iran created just for them. But what if the deepest betrayal wasn't the fake intelligence they received, but the one piece of real intelligence the Iranians let through? The meticulously crafted, fully verifiable file on Iran's most advanced cyber warfare division. Inside the CIA's Langley headquarters, they called it the Rosetta Stone, a complete breakdown of the personnel, infrastructure, and attack protocols of Iran's elite, Unit 734. It was the one actionable piece of intelligence in a sea of lies, the one chance to strike back. And so they did. With the fury of a wounded empire, the U.S. Cyber Command launched its most sophisticated offensive tools against the targets identified in the file. It was meant to be a decapitation strike, a clear message that America's eyes were still everywhere, a necessary act of retribution. But there was no Unit 734. It was a ghost, a digital hall of mirrors built by the IRGC for one purpose: to be attacked. The facility the U.S. was now targeting wasn't a hostile server farm. It was a diagnostic sandbox, an intelligence trap designed to catch and analyze the very weapons fired at it. This was Prometheus's final, silent scream. His warning wasn't that an attack was coming. It was that the CIA's own counterattack was the final move in Iran's game. By attacking the honeypot, the United States was actively demonstrating its most secret cyber capabilities, revealing its zero-day exploits, and handing its playbook directly to its enemy. The real attack began minutes later. It wasn't loud. There were no explosions. It was a quiet, systemic unraveling. The tools the U.S. had just used against the fake, Unit 734, were now turned back against their creators, wielded with perfect precision by Iran and its global partners, who had been watching the masterclass. The echo chamber was never just about controlling the narrative. It was about controlling the response. Iran didn't just build a maze for its enemy. It convinced its enemy to design the key, hand it over, and then lock themselves inside. The most devastating weapon deployed was not a line of code. It was a single, perfectly placed piece of truth. In this new era of conflict, the front line is not a trench dug in the dirt. It is the invisible boundary between fact and fiction, between trust and deception. To understand the wars of tomorrow, you have to break through the noise of today. To see the whole story and understand the new battlefield, subscribe to Breaking_the_Front.